The desert wind sang like an old ghost across the Montana plains as Marshal Colt Reeves rode through the valley he had once bled in, the place where half his legends were born and the other half buried. He wasn't a man who feared anything. Not bullets, not death, not the devils who haunted the frontier, but the quiet. The quiet always unsettled him. It carried memories, and memories carried the screams of that night 20 years ago when he found a half-starved Apache girl hiding in the ashes of a raided camp, the girl with the eagle-shaped birthmark on her shoulder, the girl he protected until the tribal elders reclaimed her, the girl who disappeared before he ever learned her name. Colt had thought of her more times than he'd admit, yet he told himself it meant nothing, until the day a dust cloud rose behind him and a rider approached with the confidence of a storm. It wasn't until she removed her hat, long black hair falling like a wild river, eyes sharp as the desert sun, that Colt froze, because those eyes belonged to a memory he never escaped. "Marshal Reeves," she said, voice steady but carrying a tremor of fate. "Cowboy, I came to marry you. I'm the lost Apache girl you saved 20 years ago." He stared, unable to breathe as she continued. "My name is Nayeli. They call me Eagle-Heart. Now I've trained, I've fought, I've walked through every shadow to find you. The spirits gave me a vision. Your life is in danger, and I swore that the man who saved me I would save in return." Colt tried to speak, but the woman dismounted and stepped close enough for him to feel the warmth of the fire in her blood. "I didn't cross half a lifetime to offer you gratitude," she whispered. "I crossed it because I belong at your side." But before Colt could ask why destiny had suddenly demanded a wife, an arrow sliced through the air and buried itself in the dirt between their boots. Shadows emerged on the ridge, armed riders, bounty hunters, hungry for the marshal's blood. Nayeli's hand moved to her. "Bow in a blur. They've been following you for days," she said. "I told you, a storm is coming." Colt loaded his revolver, eyes locked on hers. "Then I reckon we face it together." She smiled with a confidence only warriors knew, just like 20 years ago, "Cowboy, but this time I fight for you." And as the first rider charged, the two of them stood back to back, the past and future colliding in a blaze of bullets, arrows, and a destiny written in fire. Night fell over the canyon like a shroud stitched from smoke and bruised moonlight, and Colt Reeves found himself leaning against a rock, bleeding from a shoulder wound he insisted was just a scratch, while Nayeli knelt beside him, her hands glowing with tribal medicines and the fierce determination of someone who refused to lose him twice. She worked silently, jaw set, her fingers trembling only when he wasn't looking, but Colt saw it, saw the storm inside her, and he knew this woman carried a truth heavier than any bullet. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and soft, a voice shaped by years of exile, danger, and prophecy. 20 years ago, she said, the spirits gave a warning to my people. They said the girl with the eagle mark would be saved by a white-eyed warrior, and that one day she would return to save his life. But they also said something else, that the warrior and the eagle girl were bound, that where one fell, the other would rise. Colt swallowed, realizing she wasn't just here out of devotion. She came because fate demanded it. But Nayeli wasn't done. She told him how she searched for him, how she left her tribe against the council's wishes, how an outlaw gang called the Black Ridge Brothers learned of their spirit-bound connection and hunted Colt, believing killing him would break her destiny and leave her vulnerable. But they underestimated you, Colt muttered, smiling through the pain. "No," she said, her eyes burning like wildfire. "They underestimated us." She leaned in closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "Didn't travel here to repay a debt. I came because my heart never forgot the boy who shielded me with his own body. I came because the spirit showed me the truth. I am meant to stand with you, to fight beside you, to build a life with you." Colt, a man who spent half his life outrunning emotion, felt something inside him crack open before he could answer. Gunshots echoed across the canyon the Black Ridge Brothers had found there. Trail. Nayeli rose, drawing her bow with the grace of a legend. "Stay behind me," she said. Colt smirked, forcing himself to his feet. "Ain't no way I'm letting my future wife take all the glory." She threw him a look that was half fury, half love. "You accept?" Then Colt lifted his revolver. "I accepted the moment you rode up to me." Eagle-Heart. Together they faced the approaching riders, warrior and marshal, prophecy and gunslinger, a firestorm of destiny and devotion, and as the canyon exploded with battle, their fates sealed themselves in blood and moonlight, tied forever by the vow born in the ashes 20 years ago. The moment Colt and Nayeli stepped into the heart of the canyon, time itself seemed to freeze, the moon hanging above like a silent judge as Tom Blackridge towered on the ridge, his silhouette stretched large across the stone like a demon carved from shadow. Colt could feel the weight of every breath, the desert holding its air as though waiting for blood to fall, while Nayeli moved with the calm of someone who had already seen this battle, in visions, and had walked through it victorious. Tom laughed, a low, bone-deep rumble that rolled through the canyon like thunder. Then he leveled his rifle at Colt, as if challenging destiny itself. "Last chance, Eagle-Heart," he bellowed. "Come to me, or I'll put the Marshal in the ground." Nayeli stepped forward, placing herself between the rifle and Colt, her eyes burning with a fire only prophecy could ignite. "If you think I'd ever bow to a man who brings death, then you know nothing of my blood," she shouted back, her voice echoing like a battle cry across the stone walls. Tom roared in fury and fired, but Nayeli moved with lightning grace, dragging Colt behind a boulder as the bullet shattered stone where their heads had been. Colt gritted his teeth. "This ends tonight," he growled. But before he could rise, Nayeli grabbed his face, her hands fierce, her touch trembling. "Listen to me," she whispered urgently. "If the spirits showed me truth, then you are the one who strikes the final blow. But only if I stand beside you. Promise me you won't fight alone." Colt held her gaze, seeing not a memory, not a prophecy, but the woman who had walked through a lifetime to stand with him. "I swear it," he said, and in that vow, something ancient and powerful settled between them. Together they rose, Nayeli drawing an arrow tipped with silver, obsidian, an arrow sacred to her people, while Colt checked his last 2 bullets, every movement silent, deliberate, fatal. Tom charged down the ridge like a bull, firing wildly, rage twisting his face into a mask of madness. Nayeli's arrow flew first, slicing the air with a high, deadly whistle before burying itself deep into Tom's thigh, sending him crashing to his knees. Colt sprinted forward despite the agony burning through his wounded shoulder, each step fueled by 20 years of fate and the promise he had made moments before. Tom ripped the arrow out and swung his rifle like a club, but Colt ducked and slammed into him, the 2 men crashing into the dust in an explosion of fists, rage and raw instinct. Tom was stronger, fueled by obsession, but Colt fought with something greater. He fought with the fire of every moment Nayeli had trusted him, every mile she had traveled to find him, every breath they had shared. The fight raged viciously until Tom pinned Colt, fingers tightening around his throat like a vice. "She belongs to me." Tom snarled. Colt's vision darkened until an eagle's cry split the sky. Nayeli leapt from the ridge above, landing with the force of a falling star. Her obsidian knife flashing in her hand, she struck Tom across the back, giving Colt the opening he needed. With one final surge, Colt drove his last bullet into Tom's chest. The outlaw fell back, shock filling his eyes as the canyon echoed with the sound of destiny sealing itself. Silence followed, deep, profound, eternal. Nayeli dropped to her knees beside Colt, her fingers brushing his bruised face as tears glittered in her eyes. "The prophecy is fulfilled," she whispered. "You lived because we fought as one." Colt cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away the tears. "I don't need a prophecy to know I meant to spend my life with you." She leaned into him, the moonlight framing them like a blessing. "Then take me, Cowboy." She breathed softly, not as a spirit-bound girl, but as the woman who chose you. And in the quiet that followed the storm, Colt Reeves kissed Nayeli Eagle-Heart. Beneath the watchful moon, sealing a bond 20 years in the making, one written not by fate alone, but by courage, devotion, and the fire of 2 souls finally finding their way home. The first light of dawn crept over the canyon walls like a slow-rising fire, painting the world in gold as Colt and Nayeli stood hand in hand, the storm of the night finally settling into a quiet that felt almost unreal. The Black Ridge brothers were finished. Their reign of terror ended beneath the desert sky, and for the first time in years, Colt felt the weight on his shoulders lift, as though the earth itself had given him permission to breathe. Nayeli watched the sunrise with the calm dignity of a warrior whose path had finally come full circle, the wind weaving through her long black hair as if honoring the courage she had carried through every mile of her journey. The spirits always said my destiny was tied to a man of the West, she murmured softly, but I never imagined that man would become the home I searched for. Colt stepped closer, resting his palm on her cheek, his voice rough with sincerity. I ain't ever been a man who believed in fate, but after last night, I reckon there are things out here bigger than bullets and blood, she smiled, her eyes warming. Then hear this truth, Colt Reeves, I didn't cross mountains and deserts to save your life alone. I crossed them to stand beside you for the rest of mine. The words hit him harder than any outlaw's punch, not because they frightened him, but because they filled him with a peace he'd never known. He took her hand and placed it over his heart, then, stay, Nayeli, stay with me in this wild world, fight with me, build with me, live with me, she inhaled deeply, her breath trembling with emotion. She could no longer hide. If I stay, she whispered, we will need both our worlds, yours and mine, a bridge between the frontier and my people. Colt nodded, already understanding. Then we'll build that bridge. As they stood at the edge of the rising sun, the desert shifting into new colors around them, an eagle circled high above, its cry echoing like a blessing carried on the wind. Nayeli leaned her head against Colt's chest, and for the first time since childhood, she felt the ache of her past ease, replaced by the certainty of a future she wanted. With every breath, Colt wrapped his arms around her, holding her not as a marshal protecting someone, but as a man embracing the woman he was born to walk beside. This ain't the end of our story, he said quietly. It's the start of the life we choose. Nayeli lifted her gaze, eyes shining. Then, let's begin, Cowboy. And together, beneath the red dawn that crowned the horizon, Colt Reeves and Nayeli Eagle-Heart walked toward the new world waiting for them, one shaped not by prophecy, but by love, courage, and the promise of a destiny they now own together.